Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Shahana Show podcast. I'm your host, Shahana. What is up, my friends? In this very first episode, I just want to share with you guys more about the show, what you can expect by tuning in, and ultimately what has inspired me to start the show to begin with. So, what has inspired me is my own healing journey. Yes, this is a show about healing, but also about self discovery and even, dare I say, evolution. So, if you're on a healing journey of any kind, then this show is for you. While my most recent situation is with chronic illness for over the last 10 years, prior to that, I did struggle with mental health stuff and drugs and alcohol in order to self medicate the mental health stuff. So, throughout all of this, with mental health and physical health issues, even, the drug and alcohol abuse, I have expanded my view across many healing modalities. I definitely did the Western medicine situation. I did the naturopathic and the alternative, and I did the mind body, and I did the spirituality and the energetic. And it wasn't until the last 3 years of starting the mind body world that I actually saw profound change and also lasting change. My story, yes, starts with a hard childhood with trauma. So we can go ahead and check the childhood trauma box off, and we're going to fast forward to high school, because that's when I had my first experience of any kind of a health issue. A little bit about me: I've always just been super curious about everything. I grew up in a religious household, so spirituality was always in my world. And I was always curious about the truth and the seen and the unseen, and philosophies and art and music and dance. And when I went to high school, it was a chance for me to expand my knowledge and also join a rock band and be on the dance team. But I also was an overachiever and wanted to be a straight A student, and I wanted to be involved in every single type of organization that there was. And what happened my senior year was I went into shutdown and I had a first depressive episode. With what I know now about the nervous system world, I was overachieving. And that overachieving put so much stress on my nervous system that I had a shutdown. But at the time, we knew that as depression. And what's the answer to depression? Doctor and medications. And so at the age of 17, I had to drop out of high school due to depression. And that was really traumatic for me. And it was the first time I would say that I lost my identity, my sense of self, due to illness. And I mention that because that's a theme that definitely kept repeating throughout my life. And after that, I was just trying to get back to that essence of what I was, who I was before that first crash. Going to school was always really important to me. Playing in a band was always important to me. Making sure I was working and making money was important for me. But I think I always did it with such dysregulation that it always ended up leading to a crash. But I never still felt right. Like, I never really still felt like the true me. Then I discovered through experimenting that when I use substances, like let's say drugs or alcohol, I would feel normal. And I craved feeling normal so bad that that became a problem off and on throughout the next many years. So not only did I already have a struggle with a sensitive nervous system and mental health issues, now I'm adding drugs and alcohol to the mix. And that can only last for so long. And then around 2012, 2013, enough had been enough, and I had gotten completely sober and really turned towards a more spiritual path. Started doing, yoga and meditation and reading tons of books about self-discovery and spirituality and self-help development, all that stuff. And I started to finally feel like I was coming back to some sort of center, a little bit of who I've been looking for this whole time, like the real Shahana. And part of coming back to myself and part of coming back to who I really am was music. So I had done music off and on throughout my 20s. And I even went to music school to learn how to produce and had bands and stuff and projects here and there. But coming back to music because I loved to do it, not because I was trying to be anything. And I was really excited to do that. I was excited to have this newfound relationship with just doing music because I love it and because I want to express myself. And around 2013, I was playing a show and I was like bumping into the microphone, losing my balance. My hands were all over the fretboard, and I was so confused because I know how to play guitar. I've been playing since I was 13. I was like, what is going on here? And I got off stage just crying because it was the worst show I've ever played, and I just didn't understand. And it was shortly after that that I noticed that my hands were numb. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I started to go to doctors, and I was like, hey, docs, like, my hands are numb and I play guitar. Y'all got to fix this situation. And that, my friends, started a now 12-year journey of dealing with some known and some unknown neurological conditions. So there began the doctor after doctor and specialist after specialist, changing insurance companies so that you can see more doctors, all while somehow working full time. And then none of that working. So then you're seeing alternative doctors and alternative treatments and naturopaths, like years of that, years. And nothing really worked. Nothing really gave me any answers. Finally, in 2017, I got a diagnosis of small fiber neuropathy, which is also known as autonomic dysfunction, and I think also dysautonomia. And I was happy to finally know something, especially because so many of my friends and family just thought because I had a mental health issue in the past that it was just that. People didn't really believe me, and I know a lot of you guys that are watching that know about that have gone through the chronic illness thing know exactly what I'm talking about, where people don't believe you, especially even the doctors, but they didn't know the root cause of the small fiber. So that began a whole other thing. And I finally got up to UCLA, was highly disappointed. They told me I was nuts, essentially. And I was like, okay, I'm done with the Western medicine and I'm going strictly naturopathic, alternative, all those things. So even though I'd already been kind of dabbling in that stuff, I went really completely towards that, as well as more like spiritual healings and energetic healings. Basically anything that came my way, I was like, yes, please. And I continued to progress. The illness continued to progress. I got less and less functional. I had to go on disability multiple times until actually I couldn't work at all anymore. I kind of stopped seeking diagnoses at some point because I knew about the power of the mind, and I knew it wasn't doing me any good to know I had 10 conditions. You know, it wasn't going to do good for my healing. I didn't want to create it more or manifest it more. And so even with the alternative treatments, even with the naturopathic stuff, I just kept getting worse. So yeah, I got to the point that I could no longer work. I hadn't played guitar in years anymore because the neurological stuff just wouldn't allow it. I was more and more hopeless all the time. And in 2020, I got a new piece of information as to what could possibly be going on. I was listening to a podcast, Luke Story's The Lifestylist, and I believe it was David Avocado Wolf on the show. And David was commenting on Luke's story and talking about how metal attracts EMF frequencies. And a few days later, I was gifted a ring. And I put on the ring, and the symptoms of the dysautonomia and all that got a lot worse. And I didn't understand really until that podcast came in my head, and I was like, okay, so I took off the ring and the symptoms got better, and put it on, worse, off, better, off. I was shocked that this ring could be making me sicker. Like EMF frequencies, what? So I got online and started doing the Googles, and I found this woman who called herself an EMF expert. She had Lyme disease, and her story was that she wasn't able to fully heal from it, even though she was doing all the treatments, until she blocked herself from EMF frequencies. And I was really curious about the connection between EMF frequencies and metal. Was there a connection? You know, like, is that what is EMF making me sick? I contacted her. We had a little consultation, and she discovered that I was living underneath high tension power lines. Well, she didn't discover it, I could see them, but she made me aware of how dangerous it was to be living literally across the street from high tension power lines, half a mile in between two substations and like a government facility in my backyard. And she was like, this could be she's like, I would never say this to people, but this literally could be the reason that you're sick, and that you've been sick for so long. And that started my whole environmental illness journey. and I found an environmental health center in Texas. And so I moved to Texas so desperate to get well. And when you spend so many years thinking it's in your head, other people thinking it's in your head, even when you have diagnoses, still questioning and gaslighting yourself and thinking it's in your head. Here I had some weird kind of tangible proof, like something I took on and off and I got sicker and what better, right? So went to Texas, went to the center, found out there that I had mold illness, chemical sensitivity, and most likely SIRS and a connective tissue disorder. At that point, I stopped going and getting diagnoses because I knew it wasn't good for my mental health. I knew I didn't want to create more of it. I didn't want to give it any more power. So I didn't get like a doctor's diagnoses of those things. One of their most sensitive patients, I couldn't even do the simplest things. I would get sick for days from one small treatment. And I began losing hope. I had all this hope, like, okay, we have some information. And I wasn't stoked to find out about mold illness and all these things, but it was something. And here comes the next part of losing my identity, once again, is I had to throw everything away. Everything that's ever been contaminated with mold. And then with chemicals, I couldn't dye my hair or wear makeup, get my nails done. All my cute clothes gone. Everything I'd ever owned, all my books, the ability to like write in a journal. I'd always wondered why I would get so unwell. Oh, all the chemicals, the pen and the paper. So in 2020, all of our lives got really small and my life just got even smaller. And now because everything I had ever known and loved was no longer no longer able to use or appreciate every item I'd ever owned went into storage. And then this chapter of my life came all about avoidance, avoiding mold, avoiding chemicals, avoiding EMF frequencies. So no electronics, threw all my clothes away, no books and writing and all these things I loved because chemicals. And, that's why I got so disoriented playing guitar. And it came time for me to leave the center. I was just spending a shit ton of money, getting worse. At that point, I had someone with me taking care of me because I was basically bedridden. And we went back to Los Angeles. Did I mention I'm from Los Angeles? I'm from Los Angeles. So I went back to Los Angeles. I was, at that point, I'm embarrassed to say, but I was confined to a room because everything was making me sick. And the house I had lived in had mold and all these things. So I had to like seal the room off so that I was safe. Which sounds ridiculous, but that was the hell I was living in, was absolute fear of everything. Like, that's going to make me sick. That's going to make me sick. That's going to make me sick. I had been bedridden basically bedridden. I mean, I wasn't like only in bed, but like spending most of my time in bed, having to have someone caregive for me for the last 6 months to it last like a year at that point because I had just collapsed. And there was just, where do you go from there? Right? And when I was at the center, I did learn about something called DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining System. And there was a woman I had met online a few years prior who also had mentioned DNRS to me. And it's a brain retraining system. It's focused on the idea that our brains are kind of the control centers. And if we can heal our brain and rewire our nervous system, then we can heal from chronic illness. And basically at this point, I'm living in a room. Like my life is in a room with no things anymore. My only option at this point was to, since I was practicing avoidance, move to a desert where there was less mold. A lot of people that suffer from mold illness will, live in their cars or campers or move to desert areas to detox the mold and heal. And the idea is like, you can't heal in mold. You have to get away from it. So for me now, knowing that I had the mold illness was like, okay, I got to go to a desert and I'm going to start doing this brain retraining thing. I had seen enough evidence of it working. People at the center had said it worked. I was following this woman online who had used it and it worked for her. And so that was my plan. But I was so unwell. It was like, and I was being taken care of. I wasn't surviving with another human taking care of me. So how was I supposed to do this? And I was on the phone with my best friend. We had been best friends since we were 7. She was like a sister to me, saw me through every aspect of my life, all the ups and the downs and everything, and she was right there. And I was talking to her and I was telling her my predicament, and she's like, Shahana, I know you're going to heal. You're strong enough to do this. I think you need to move to Sedona. I think you're going to heal there. And I had heard of Sedona, Arizona, and I didn't know much about it, but I knew Arizona equaled desert. And so I had no real direction. And my best friend ended up passing away that night. That was the last conversation I had with her. And so the next morning I woke up and was like, well, I guess I'm moving to Sedona, Arizona. So I called up, well, I didn't call her, it just sounds more dramatic, but I messaged that woman that I had been in contact with online who had done the DNRS and healed from it. I messaged her, told her my story, and was like, I need to get out of this room. I somehow need to move to Arizona. I need to somehow get well enough to drive there, find a place to live there, and I'm going to dedicate myself to the mind-body world. Can you help me? And she did. So she became my coach at that point. And I think I started working with her once a week. And she's like, start DNRS. And she had other modalities and things, but she had been someone who had been chronically sick for over 10 years, who healed using DNRS and other mind-body tools and resources. So I started working with her once a week, and within 2 months, I went from not being able to drive like 10 minutes to driving from Los Angeles to Sedona, and I began my intensive healing journey. And that was June of 22. And now here I am, February 2025, and I have recovered so much, you guys. It's not even funny. It's a miracle, actually, to go from where I was then to where I am now. And I wish it would have been a little faster, for sure, but it took a lifetime to get to this point. It's going to probably, I need to be okay and accept and surrender to the fact it might take more than 2.5 years to get to a full recovery. But that's what I plan on. And that comes to the first part of my inspiration for starting the podcast, is the miracle of healing that I have achieved during the mind-body work and what I know is possible through it. It's revolutionary. And I think we all need to know more about it. I know nervous system regulating is a huge thing on social media. It's just become bigger over time. And I'm just one more living example of the power of it. And my life is 100% 180. And the miracles I've experienced, the profound awarenesses and learnings and wisdom that has come through all of this stuff, it's like the medicine that I had been looking for since I was a teenager. If I had known then what I know now, I may have had a very, very different life. So that's also an inspiration for me for starting the show, to spread awareness that things can be different and that perhaps we've been looking at illness through a very specific lens, and that lens, there's more lenses over here. And also because this work that I used to heal my body, it did heal the mental struggles that I had. It healed my emotional world. It healed even my spiritual crises that I had had. It all kind of started to make sense. It was like all the books I have read, all the teachers I had watched, everything, I came to find my own truth doing the work myself. And it's been the most profound and powerful thing. And that leads me to the second reason I'm starting this podcast, is because I believe that we're at a critical point in our evolution, in our world, in our society, in our consciousness. And I have found that through doing this work the last 2.5 years, that there is a parallel that seems to be happening between my healing journey and others' healing journeys, or my healing journey and this collective healing journey. Through healing my emotions, healing my trauma, healing my nervous system dysregulation, I came to understand different levels of consciousness, states of being, and I began to occupy those spaces more and more. And I feel that as I did, things shifted in my world. And in doing the work, I seem to have found that perhaps there is something bigger, like this bigger stuff that I've been wondering about since I was a kid. It's like starting to kind of make sense. Because as I've explored layers of my subconscious mind, I became more aware and more spiritually sound. And I started to see this parallel between me and the world, like I mentioned. So, what if we are a microcosm of some macrocosm, right? Does what I do affect the whole? I read this book called The Divine Matrix by Greg Braden. And I wish I could remember the exact names of things and the exact numbers, but I don't. But it changed a huge perspective for me. They actually they cited some studies in the book, and one I think is the Maharishi effect, where they did a study of monks that were praying for peace over a given area and a war-torn area. And as the monks prayed for peace, crime rates went down, hospital visits went down, stuff like that. They were able to tangibly see a difference. And they were able to figure out an equation. I'm sorry, I'll find the book. I'm sorry, I don't have the book, so do not get all mad at me for this because I don't know. And if you do, like, write it in the comments or whatever. But it was something like it took the square root of 1% of a population to pray for peace in a given population for there to actually be a change of peace. He also cited how in the holographic principle, how if there's a picture, let's say a tree, yay, a picture of a tree, and we cut up that picture of a tree, holographic image, every single piece will contain the whole tree. So it's this idea that each part contains the whole. So these types of things make me think about me, you, a bigger whole. So what if all those things are true? And what if by us healing ourselves, not only are we healing the people that we're around through our behavior being different and our actions being different and our levels of love and compassion being different, but what if we're just kind of on an energetic consciousness level changing much more than we think? And the more of us that are doing this healing journey, what if we are changing the world that we see? We can't go around fixing everything that we have no power and control over. But we do have power and control over is ourselves in our inner world. And it's these big questions that make me want to start this show. It is healing and self-discovery and evolution and, dare I say, revolution. And so in the next few episodes, I'm going to be going further into my healing journey and share with you guys more in depth exactly what I've gone through in the last 2.5 years, meaning the mind-body tools I've been using and how I've been using them and where they came from, and then which is basically comes down to Vanessa, yourgratefulguide.com, your grateful guide on the socials. She's been my coach this whole time, and she is the reason I would say that I am here. And I bring her on the show too, and we get to talk to her, and you get to see firsthand what she does, and also my healing journey from her perspective. With that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you so much, and I will be seeing you in the next few episodes. Until then, take care. I don't know how to do this one, so you're stuck with this one.